Welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of our VIP visit with Imagineer Ray Spencer. Ray, thank you very much for being with us again.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Jim. I've been looking forward to coming back, and here we are. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, same here. Thank you. And I think it's so interesting. You've mentioned Main Street USA and then immediately Tomorrowland. It's like the two almost dichotomies that actually go together, and he saw that. But Tomorrowland, where did that come from necessarily? Why would Walt necessarily think of that? But it reflected what he himself wanted to do and wanted to look at and celebrate and nurture, even if he hadn't already done it.
Yeah, and I would guess too that the climate back then was very different.
That's true.
You have kind of the euphoria of post-war, with the World War II ending in 1945. And then the aspiration and optimism of the future.
Yes. Yes. And he was certainly the embodiment of that, very directly and concretely wanting to make sure in his own way and in any way he could that everything be used for good, everything be used for a positive means. Some Disney fans know this, some don't, that Disneyland was originally envisioned as Mickey Mouse Park across the street from the studio. Much more like what I would consider a park. Yeah. I mean, I think of as like a smaller, venue. And there were going to be a lot of charming and fanciful elements to it, but nothing like Tomorrowland, nothing, so
no.
The more his ideas expanded for Disneyland, the more everything expanded.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked carefully at the concept sketch for that park, Mickey Mouse Park in Burbank, but I do recall there's a train.
That's right. That's right.
And there's I don't know if it's a main street or a little town or something. I mean, those pieces were there. But the expansion, like you said, at Disneyland, I think the opportunity to really expand on the kind of what if and look into the future and look at the romance of, like for instance, Jungle Cruise. I mean, the romance of foreign lands and the unknown and
yeah, for sure. And Adventureland, specifically the Jungle Cruise being such a huge part of Disneyland, it really spoke to everything that he was and wanted to be. So it's kind of it's thrilling to think about it on that level. And I think your remarks on his genius in terms of Main Street USA and that whole welcoming at home feel, again and again, I think about this because, again, who would you might have a Main Street, you might have a charming land of yesteryear, but the fact that he funneled everybody through that, when you get to Disneyland, that's where you're going before you do anything else. How did he even know that would be so important?
I don't know. It might have been, who knows, but I think grounding everybody in the familiar, but romanticizing the familiar. I mean, at the time, maybe that's not familiar to people that were born in 2000. I don't know, but there's something very familiar about it. I was going to say it has kind of an innocence and a safety and a comfort to it, It's not like you turn the corner and go down the alley and there's muggers waiting there and there's mountains of trash and old cars with no wheels. It's none of that. It's safe.
It's beautiful.
It's joyous.
And it's a wondrous experience. And so often people are in such a hurry to get to the e-ticket attractions that they'll rush down Main Street. But even so, I think that they're impacted by that.
Yeah.
And when you leave, even that reassurance is a nice way to end what can be kind of a hectic, crazy day in a good way. But that gentle stroll, out again.
It speaks of innocence and simpler times, and
Yeah.
So.
And I think he somehow, again, maybe just instinctively knew that, because he even in 1955, he was calling Main Street USA the heartline of America.
Interesting.
And it still is, even though, as you say, most people have no direct experience of it. And even their parents have had no direct experience of it. But still, it's in our DNA. It's in our DNA. And there's something within us that responds.
Well, and then DNA is an interesting term, because I think it's also the DNA of a Disney park. Maybe not all of them, but I had to think long and hard about all of this when we did the Buena Vista Street at California Adventure, and redesigned the whole front of that park. It's what is the DNA of a Disney park, and what makes it successful, and what makes sort of the entrance and arrival and acclamation, what makes that successful, and Main Street is part of that DNA, I think. Because it gets you acclimated and gets you comforted and gets you oriented, and where you are, and you can. It's like you can leave Main Street and go to all these different areas and do all these different activities, but it's your home base. It grounds you.
Yeah, and I do think that Buena Vista Street is. And it's almost where I was going with all this, is a great triumph of Disney Imagineering. It's so beautiful, and especially, forgive me, but especially compared to what was there before, which had its own appeal. But this is so beautiful and so welcoming and so elegant. And what a triumph! So congratulations to you and everyone who worked on it. We talked about this before, because the way we met was I was sort of a consultant on the Carthay Circle Theatre and what might or might not be inside.
Yeah. And
that's how we met, and we definitely connected and bonded over the Walt elements.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know that a goal of the sort of reimagining of Disney California Adventure was make sure that Walt was part of it.
It seems very simplistic now, but it took a while to get there, because what wasn't working was when you entered the park before we did the new entrance in Buena Vista Street. It was sort of the antithesis of a Disney park. It was kind of irreverent, a little bit sort of slapstick humor. There was no real Disney character presence. It was kind of like, well, we're going to take this and turn it on its head and make it kind of the un-Disney park, and give it a little bit of that, trendy kind of fresh style. But people. This seems elementary, but people come to Disney to see Disney, and they weren't seeing Disney, not like they were expecting, and so I think that taking that Buena Vista Street and really understanding that Walt's story is an amazing story, and it didn't just. It really had many chapters, and one chapter was, Marceline, Missouri, and his hometown. That a lot of Main Street was kind of based on his recollections and romance of that hometown, America. Well, what happened when he left Kansas City and came out to California? There's a new Main Street there, and it tells a new story, and the new story is the next chapter of Walt Disney's career, which was leaving Kansas City, coming to California with a cardboard suitcase and $40 in his pocket and some dreams. And what did he see? What did he feel? And think about when we designed Buena Vista Street, we took the time period 1923 to 1937. because we wanted to take the whole sort of history of Disney starting, working in his uncle's garage, creating the studios, doing the Alice comedies, inventing the multiplane camera, doing the first sound cartoon, doing the first color cartoon, all the way up to doing the first full-length animated film, Snow White. And every one of those steps had risks and investment and could have turned south very, very easily, and we wouldn't be talking right now if that was the case.
That is for sure.
And it's remarkable what was done during that time period. And, we did some interviews, and we found that 50% of the people interviewed, college-age kids that were interviewed, didn't know Walt Disney was a real person. They thought it was just a corporate name,
Yeah.
And so it seemed important to us, if we're going to tell a story like this, to bring the name and give it a face again. And so you could have that kind of personal handshake with Walt Disney if that's what you wanted to have. And so that was motivating, and you're a part of that too, with your history and your reference, and you were very helpful with kind of helping to figure that out. So.
Oh, well, thank you. It was a great honor to be involved in it.
That was important to us to tell that story. And so it seemed very natural. And then the Carthay Circle Theatre, we needed a castle at the end of our main street, which was, what do you put at the end of Buena Vista Street? The city jail? No. The Carthay Circle Theatre, where Snow White premiered in 1937. And then from the proceeds from that film, as you know, the Disney studios on Buena Vista and Burbank were built. And, had that film not succeeded, again, we may not be sitting here talking today.
Right.
So.
It's the absolute foundation of everything that came after. Because it wasn't just a success. It was a mammoth, phenomenal, worldwide success. So it really just established everything else, and took Disney storytelling to, by leaps and bounds. It's really quite incredible. I think that also helped Walt. I don't want to say gain confidence, because I don't think he was ever lacking in confidence, but, showing him that he could expand. He could always expand, and his audience would embrace it, and the world would.
Right.
So that the Carthay Circle is there as a symbol of that is quite incredible. It's a culmination of that whole thing.
It's very distinctive in its architecture, so it serves its purpose as, the weenie at the end of the street.
Yes, as Walt would say. And for those who don't know, maybe you could tell us more about the real Carthay Circle Theatre. I mean, you said that the Snow White had its premiere there. It was quite the landmark in what we call Hollywood, wasn't it, in its day?
It escapes me the exact year it was built, but I think it was on San Vicente, in sort of West Hollywood-ish.
Yeah.
And very iconic. I mean, a very iconic building, and very, very interesting in its interior design. The owner of the theater commissioned a California Impressionist artist named Frank Tenney Johnson to create paintings of historical California that were used throughout the theater. And then the largest painting he did was used on the curtain drop of the theater. And that painting was of the Donner Party in the Sierras. And here's a bit of interesting trivia. If you go to the Carthay Circle Theatre at Disney California Adventure, a reproduction of that painting is framed at the base of the stairs that lead up to the restaurant on the second floor. So we tried to include some of that original motif with light fixtures and wall coverings and things that you might have found in the original Carthay Circle Theatre. Although ours at DCA was probably a little bit more more Spanish revival inside. I think the Carthay Circle Theatre, as originally built, seemed to be, obviously it was long gone before we built this, so it's hard to say, but it seemed to have a little bit more kind of a Rococo interior. It seemed a little bit less Spanish on the inside from what we could determine, but we really wanted to make this interior special. So we took liberties with departing from what the original had, but we wanted to take the DNA or the foundation of the original and build on it and make it something really special. So
yeah, and you definitely succeeded. It's just beautiful. Certainly my favorite place to go at Disney California Adventure. Yeah. And it's interesting because I remember some discussions on this. You were building the exterior or recreating the exterior of the theater, but inside it's not a theater in a way that freed you to do whatever you wanted to do, because the one thing it wasn't going to be was a theater. So naturally it was going to be different from the real thing anyhow.
The discussions went all over the place. It was the first discussion, of course, is in a theater, but it was quickly determined that it probably would not be best to make it a theater for many reasons. But there was discussions about doing something that kind of told the story of Walt Disney's life, or doing a dark ride, or doing a cafe, a small cafe. There was ideas going up all over the place, and they would go up in the air, and some would stick, and some would fall to the floor. But, the idea of the restaurant was something that was supported by the chairman of Parks and Resorts at the time, Tom Staggs. And so, getting corporate support from any direction is very important, because at Imagineering, any concept you have can be quickly diverted into a file cabinet, never to be seen again. Because it's you work with a whole strategy and a whole sort of layer of executives and management and lines of business that have needs. And so, you come up with a cool idea, and it may be a cool idea, but if it doesn't serve the needs of the company and the divisions, then it's not really going to go anywhere.
Right, for sure.
So,
yeah, those are the practicalities, the realities. So,
yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
But certainly in this case, what a beautiful outcome.
Yeah, I think so too. And Coulter Wynn was the architect of record for Buena Vista Street and the Carthay Circle Theatre, and I think he did a masterful job.
I sure agree. I love being there. It's so beautiful. You spoke so eloquently about what Main Street is supposed to do at Disneyland. Well, you certainly achieved that in Disney California Adventure. It has a different kind of a feel, but but on the other hand, it's the same feel of comfort and kind of uplift and reassurance, like John Hench said.
That was very important to me when we were designing that. And one thing you notice at California Adventure does not have a berm. So you can see through the turnstiles into the park. At Disneyland, you can't really, because you have to go around the berm, which the railroad track sits on, and go through the tunnels, and then you're in Town Square or Main Street. California Adventure doesn't have that. So I have a napkin sketch where I took the hub at Carthay Circle, where the fountain is, and kicked it off to one side, so you can't see out of the park from the hub, from the fountain. And that was very intentional. So because you don't want to be sitting there in imagine if you were at Town Square and you could see out to the Esplanade and you could see the ticket booths and you could see it just wouldn't work. So, that was one of the challenges we had at California Adventures. We didn't have the luxury of having a big, 15-foot tall earth berm around the park to keep you from seeing outside. So, we have to think about things like that.
Certainly, these are details that the guest doesn't think about, but it has its impact.
Yeah,
it certainly succeeds in that for sure. I mean, I never really realized that about where the fountain is, but boy, that works.
You can still see the Carthay straight down the pipe there, but you can't see you once you're in there. You're not looking back outside, so things just happen to line up. I mean, we inherited streets and things that we had to make them kind of line up, and we did. And so the other thing that's interesting there, I mention this a lot because I like it a lot, and that's the Storyteller statue at California Adventure of Walt and Mickey in the suitcase. It was very intentional to put him on the ground, not up in a planter or not up on a monument base like the partner statue over at Disneyland, which is Walt and Mickey, and he's holding his arm up like, I'm giving you all of this kind of thing. But it looks like a historical monument. But it truly, if we were supposed to be in California in the 1920s or the 1930s, Walt was still alive then. So you're not going to put him in a planter up on a pedestal, He had to be on the same grade as everybody walking around, and that's why what I liked telling myself, and when I was thinking about this, was really, if you have dreams and you go somewhere, you can realize those dreams, because when Walt came to California, he had dreams, but he hadn't achieved them yet. So as a guest, he's one of us and we're one of him, and your dreams are possible if you can kind of see it that way,
I think that's the reaction that people have with that statue, whether they consciously know it or not. Yeah. Because people people really react to that, and they love having their picture taken with it, and it really touches them on a completely different level than the other one does.
And it's funny, when you think about it, because we had a lot of internal dialogues with different groups within Disney about that statue. Is it safe? Are people going to be able to climb up on it? And safety is the number one consideration. So, the reason the suitcase is on its end is so that somebody can't easily climb up on top of it. There's design features built into that are designed to make it safe. And all of those things are considered when these things are conceived and built.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
It just doesn't happen.
These are the amazing details of Imagineering that the guest doesn't know and isn't supposed to know. So
someday I may share with you my first little concept sketch of that statue.
Oh, I would love.
And you'll be sworn to secrecy, because if anybody saw it, and especially when I was an employee, I probably would have been fired immediately because it's so bad. No, I'm kidding, but it was a pretty crude sketch, but the sculptor and the people involved in that were so amazing, to make it something so special.
Yeah, it really, really works. It's quite incredible, and everything works together in the true Imagineering tradition. This has been a fantastic visit, Ray, and
well, thank you.
And thank you for being here. And I do hope you'll come back at a future time where we'll talk more about trains and Walt Disney, and we've barely scratched the surface of some of the projects that you worked on. So we'd like to hear more about that.
Of course, yeah. No, it's great, Jim. Thank you.
Well, it's a great honor to have you, and a great honor to know you. You've always been so kind to me, so I really treasure that, Ray.
Well, I treasure it too, and I treasure your dedication and your passion about Disney history, and all the the history that you've accumulated. It's all really interesting and all very important, and I'm really glad you're there to sort of keep your eye on things and document things, and it's really It's really important stuff to me.
Ah, well, great. Well, I feel the same way, and it's a great compliment hearing you say those things to me, coming from you.
Thank you.
So we will have you back at some point, and I know everyone will be very excited about that. And so I invite everyone to watch for that, and to please join us next time for our next VIP visit.